Yeah, like Jen said, my name is Scully. I've met a bunch of you. I've talked with you on the phone. I met more yesterday. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Yeah, I work for TNAM, and I manage the project manager, product owner of modernresources.org. And it's a large suite of tools to help people document monitoring and research across different subject matter experts. And I have done hour-long webinars on each individual piece of the tool set. I've spent days with people explaining it. It's complicated. There's a lot to it. So I'm going to try really hard to keep it short today, but in depth enough that you guys have something to provide me feedback on. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on it and to help build towards the next session where we're going to talk about ideas and products and things that you guys need to support what you're trying to do. Because it's a tool to support many different people. We're trying to have a broad scope. So to start with, I just want to talk about some of the principles we're trying to build the tool and we're trying to build this infrastructure on. And this is the FAIR data principle. It's come around the last couple of years. FAIR data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So to have FAIR data, you need to document it. You need to have pretty consistent documentation across multiple different data sets to make it findable. Everyone has a different definition of what they need to use data. Some people are like, give me your data. I don't care how you collected it, but other people are really interested in how it was collected. We talked a little bit yesterday and touched on methodology and how different methodology affects your results. And we're trying to build a system to help support this FAIR data principle. And it's complicated. Building infrastructure to support collaboration is complicated. We have a lot of different tools out there. Modern Resources doesn't exist alone in the world. I feel like we used to think a little bit like that because it's very Pacific Northwest. We're sort of our own little bubble, but we started really starting to think about it as a part of different types of systems, a part of an infrastructure to get data from collector to decision maker, so in a streamlined fashion. And we know it's not the only tool that people are going to use, but we want it to connect to different tools. And I like to think about it like you want to flip a switch and you want to get your data. Like when you turn on the lights in a room, you don't think about where it came from. You're not like, oh, this is electricity is provided to me by the river today. That doesn't matter to you. You have electricity. It could be, wind, river, water. It could be coal, for all you know. Same thing with the data. That's where we want to get to. You flip the switch, the data comes to you. You see where it came from and how you got it, but you don't have to deal with that SAM spreadsheet. It looks different than Meg's spreadsheet, and it all includes it all together. So we're trying to find ways to flow information through multiple different systems to get it to people to use, either in analysis or decision making. And there's different levels. It's complicated. It might work for one group, it might not work for a different group. So we're working towards it, knowing that we need to connect different systems. But to do this, we also need people. To build cyber infrastructure, we need communities of practice. We need managers buy-in. We need people who are doing the monitoring. We need their buy-in. There needs to be both effort and buy-in on all sorts of different levels, and we need to understand needs. Like we built this system, and we're coming back now to understand who needs what and how they need that to look, so we can start making changes to the tools we have, so that you get what you need easily. The goal is not to add workload; it is to subtract workload, so you can do more interesting things. And it's also to connect it to multiple different people. So it's not only a tool built in isolation. It's a group of people contributing to the building of a tool. And my great hope for this workshop when we're coming in was that I would hear ideas from you guys that we could build into the tool that would then make your life easier. And I heard a couple yesterday, and I'm hoping to hear more today. And then figuring out how feasible they are and resourcing them and that kind of thing is like a longer path. But just starting with the ideas of what you need as a community will help understand how we can build it and continue to support people. So what is Modern Resources? I've talked a little bit about the what we want to do and where we're trying to get to. But Modern Resources is an online system to support natural resources, project design, and documentation. Like Jen said, we built that fact sheet, which took up way more time than one would think, but it was beautiful. We tried to make it, so we wanted to change it every year, so, you know. But you can go there right now to modernresources.org. You can see the different tools and things that are available. I'll sort of run through the list of the major tools that are available in Modern Resources. And again, like I said, I can spend, you know, time training, an hour on a webinar, like going through each field in a tool and what it means and how it links to different things. So I'm just trying to stay at a high level, as much as I'd like to get in the weeds and talk about how things connect and that kind of stuff. But high enough level that I don't eat up all of my time. So starting with the study design tool, I guess I should walk this first. It's a workflow. We're trying to design it so that you start at certain levels and then you build through to the final level, which is the Monitoring Explorer, where you show where your data has been collected. And through this workflow, you'll document project level information, methods and protocols, and then your sample design, how you pick sites. And I'll walk through each of those tools. So the sample study design tool documents your project level information. We think of it as a high level umbrella. It allows us to make methods and protocols reusable. So this is very specific to what your project is doing and where you're collecting, and like why you're collecting that data, your objectives, and that kind of thing for your project, the questions you're asking. And below that, we think of the methods and protocols. So we have tools and libraries for documenting your methods and protocols. We think of methods as a step-by-step process you use to collect a piece of data. So I'm traditionally an aquatic scientist. Now I do software development. But so for example, for me, it'd be like collecting pool tail fines or pebble counts. The actual step-by-step process you do in the field to collect that data. That is what we call a method. And I know there's different definitions of different things, but we went through a process with a lot of different people to come up with these definitions, and that's how we built the tool. That's the method, and what we've done and we promote is the documentation of methods once and then reuse of that methodology. So for example, we went through and we entered the EMAP methodology when we first built the system, so multiple people can pull that methodology in. Or we did an exercise with fish links. We had 20 some odd fish link methods. Turns out AFS endorses 4. So we went to everybody who published a method, we had a discussion, we facilitated that process, and we went to 4. So everybody can use the same 4 fish link methods in their protocol, which means then you can go to the system, click on a method, and see who's collecting that methodology, call them up, write them an email, and say, hey, I'm also collecting that data. You want to share, or what, did you have this happen to you, or start having discussions around your methodology. We think about the protocol as a collection of methods. I like to think about it as a puzzle, personally. So you take your methods and you plug them together, and then you can achieve your objective or answer your questions. In our protocols, we document the indicators and the metrics that you calculate from your data collection analysis. So it's sort of bringing everything together. And we also have allowed for protocols to be reusable. So, I can use someone else's protocol. We have the same question, but we have a different area of inference or area of interest that we're trying to interpret our information at. So yeah, there's lots of different things we promote, streamlined discussions. We have tools to add discussions in there and lots of different nuances to this. You have photos, your assumptions, and that kind of stuff. So that's sort of the general idea of the protocol and methods library. And then a step finer detail is we have sample designer tools, which help you document where you're going to sample and how you selected that site. Why did you pick that site? And I'm going to go through this step in detail because it sort of pertains to what we're talking about here. But I'll just sort of run over some of the high-level things. You can add your own, upload your own sites into the tool. We have some process for selecting sites from a master sample using the Chris algorithm in the background. We also have ways to download a shapefile from the tool. So you could add your sites in there, either from a CSV file or your own shapefile or something else. Or you could add your sites into the tool, and then you can get information back to help you sample that. And you can say, oh, I can do that at home. But if you're sharing with somebody, and you're trying to document things through time, this would allow you to then have that shapefile in one accessible area on the internet. You can go to the URL and find it there. Also, it creates consistent documentation for your design. So 5 years from now, you can say, how did we pick those sites again? Or someone else can go and they can search in there and they say, how did, Becca's monitoring program pick her site? You could search and you could find the documentation on how I picked my sites, which would be valuable for you to know if you wanted to use them in your analysis. And I'll go more into detail on this. And then the final piece of the puzzle, what everybody asked for, is the Monitoring Explorer tool. And this tool is built to help you see who's sampled. So the Designer tool is where do I plan on sampling, and the Explorer tool is who's sampled. I already collected data there. So it's a documentation of where and when and how data was collected. So, for example, you click on one of these sites and you can see the organization, the monitoring program, the data repository. If there's a protocol, you can see the protocol. So you can go through and you can collect all that different metadata. You see the sample date, the lat long, so on. So the idea is that we would love to just put all our data in one database so everybody get it out. That's very complicated. So we started with the low-hanging fruit. We can get people to agree to share their who, what, where, when, and how data was collected. Then you can go and you can find that information from the original collector. You can, you connect back to their data repository. You can get that information. We're thinking about trying to build tools in here to search certain geographic areas and then automatically generate data requests to people. So ways to find and access data, but not being the central repository for everybody's data, because that's too much. Like you have so many data points. We just want to promote discovery of information and well-documented metadata. So we're really trying to promote this tool and doing some work on it this year to make it easier and more accessible to people. This is really one of our flagship tools. Along with all of that, so you document all this information in mining resources, great, or you have people that work for you documented, or you see other people documented. So it's in our tool. But additionally, we built APIs, and it's the programmer for programmers. But basically, I think of them as ways that computers can talk to each other. Simplified for me, but the idea is that we've designed and built the tool such that you can go here, use these APIs to pull information out of the tool. You can say, okay, I want to see all of the sample designs that I have entered into monitoring resources. You can, if you have a developer or you're familiar with APIs, you can come and you can use this to pull that information into your web tool or to a different web tool. We've also started building ways that information can be imported into monitoring resources using these APIs, so that you can build your own user interface and then you can document your information in here. So it follows the same structure and it can be used by multiple different people, but your users see your interface, whatever you want that to look like. So this is really exciting. We're really trying to explore this part of the tool. It's challenging because it's hard to have these discussions because I'm just starting to understand it myself. But the idea is that connecting to other systems. We don't want to be a standalone system. We want to feed information to other people in other places and sort of move data and information around so that it can be used in many ways. So document one, used many ways, building an enterprise system. Those are the sort of suite of tools and what we can do. And like I said, we can go in there, we can look at it all, and type information, and understand what each field means. That'll take a while, but that's the high-level overview. But the part I really want to focus on today is the sample designer. And the sample designer has two separate workflows. There's a GRIS workflow, and then there's all other types of design. And I'm not going to, all of those types of designs is a process where you can upload your sites, and then you sample this site on this day, or this year basically, and then you document why you selected the site. You pick a design type from a drop-down list and so on. It's a documentation tool. It's not doing any work for you. Now the GRIS workflow is a little bit different, and I'll go through that in a little more detail in a second. But within the GRIS workflow, we built two additional separate workflows, which is It's a little confusing. You can select the site from a sample frame using the R code, and we have R code that runs in the background, or you can select sites from a map, and I'll show you each of these in a second. But I just want to show you what you get by using either one of these workflows. What you get is a fully documented sample design with your, you have descriptions, it tracks your protocol if you have one, you can track your frame definition. For this one, it was a GRITS workflow, so you track your master sample. So if you have this issue with we're getting new master samples, you would know which master sample this design came from because it's been tracked here. So going through the process, you can track these things. Also, you can track information like your panels. So if you have rotating panels, you can track that kind of information. So it's a repository. It builds you this nice documentation. It's readable by a person, has a persistent URL that you can share with anyone. Anyone can go in here. Once you finish your design and publish it, anyone can go in here, search for it, and sort of start a community of understanding how you selected your site. That's the goal with any of these workflows, is to get this consistent design documentation. So let's talk about the GRITS workflow. This is the small reading part of the presentation, and I'll just go through it. I'll go through it so you sort of understand it, but obviously you'll have more questions and we can sort of talk about it. But this is what you do. You create a sample design in Modern Resources. You select the protocol, so that's again your methods and that you're collecting. You select a master sample. We have 12 master samples in Modern Resources right now. A couple BLM master samples, Columbia Basin master sample, the North American bat monitoring master samples. And you define your target frame, and that's through a series of drop downs based on the attributes you have associated with the points in the master sample. You also can upload your own custom attributes to be associated with those sites. You can select and upload legacy sites. That's something that Scott and the BLM are focused on, and we're working on them on making sure that all works and making it sort of flow. So that the idea is that you upload existing set sites, and then you can use those in your design. You can create panels if you want, again, optional. You can define strata. And then in the background, we run the R code, the site selection R code, that's the survey package. We have just finished some documentation on this step. So we have documentation on that if you're interested in hearing what happens. I'm interested in hearing from you how to share this part of the tool. I know that people use GitHub, and I know that there's different ways to share that code, but we don't want it to be a black box anymore. We want that to be publicly viewable and accessible, usable. And then you can, once you've selected sites, you can evaluate sites. We track those evaluations. You then go to the field, and then you can come back and report data collection events. So the idea is, like, by going through all this workflow, you have a documentation of your design. So that's the GRITS sample design workflow in Modern Resources. The other workflow we have, and like I said, BLM right now, and Scott maybe we talked about this a little bit, is using this tool. We went through some learning together, but I think we're coming to a better place. The idea behind them using Modern Resources is to increase efficiency, have good documentation, and make it more easily available to multiple different people in multiple different places to answer different questions. So the same master sample, but maybe they have a different question, so they want to choose different strata or something along those lines. So then the second workflow is selecting cells from a map. And this is a workflow that we built for the North American Bat Monitoring Program. And as of right now, it's not built into the Modern Resources.org toolset. We have started exploring and scoping how we would build it into the toolset and what that would look like and what that would mean. But right now, it's a sort of a standalone application that uses APIs to document information in and out of Modern Resources. And There's some advantages to that and there's some disadvantages to it, but that's where it is right now. So this workflow is, again, you create a project that is a North American bat monitoring term. We would call it, say, design and monitoring resources. You select a protocol, you select a master sample, and these are those grids that Kathy and Emily were talking about yesterday. There's a 10 by 10 kilometer grid with priority order associated with each sample frame, with each grid, I'm sorry, not sample frame. Then you define your sample frame. So if you're a national park in Colorado, you could use these filters to say, you know, this is my state, this is my jurisdiction, and then you could define your potential sample area. Within that sample area, you evaluate sites, you go to the field, and then you report your data collection events. The next couple of slides show this in a little more detail. So the idea is that you can come to the map, and you define where you plan on sampling. So all these striped sites are where you plan on sampling. All these red sites indicate that that sample has already, that site has already been collected. That cell has been selected by someone else. If you hover over that cell, you can see who else claims that cell on the side here. This is stationary point acoustics. They're already going to sample it there. Here's an email address and the project associated with it. So you could go back and you could say, okay, great. Hey, you're going to sample that cell, so I'm going to move my sample over to this cell. Or you can call them and say, like, well, maybe I want to sample that cell, or something along those lines, or you can call them and get their data. Additionally, we tried to indicate priorities by using this green color. Any of the green sites are the highest priority by state. They're the top 5% of the grid's order within that state. You can see the grid's ID again when you hover over a cell, but we're trying to visually force people into, persuade people into these higher priority cells. So you go through and you again use the filters, or you click on a cell and you put it into your sample frame. And then the second step is to evaluate. You go to each of these cells, and again, we say you list them out for you from highest priority to lowest priority, and you go through and you can see those are the grid IDs. Here's the priority. Your highest priority in your sample frame. You define where you plan on sampling, and then you go through and you say, okay, I'm gonna not select this, not gonna sample this one because of lack of resources, or I'm not gonna survey this one because I don't have any permission. You go through and you evaluate that sample frame and sample cell to decide if you're gonna sample that one and indicate and track that. This allows, again, for collaboration. So then you can see this cell is already selected and this cell is already selected. So you don't have to worry about those, even if they were in your potential sample frame. So that workflow, again, isn't currently built into monitoring resources. We're trying to figure out how to do that. We have North American bat monitoring program is using it right now. The Monarch Health, what's the acronym now?
Integrated Monarch Monitoring Program.
Thank you. The Integrated Monarch Monitoring Program is talking about using the same tool to help them, again, guide people to these high priority cells and then track it, because if you have a bunch of different people from all over the country trying to select sites for a master sample, that could be someone's all-day job, emailing files back and forth, tracking these things. I mean, there's examples in the first year of the North American Bat Monitoring Program, or one of the years, where 2 people sampled the same site, or the same cell, not the same exact location, but the same grid cell. So like trying to distribute these efforts across these grid cells by having this visual sort of centralized tracking tool, enterprise system to better document information. So those are the workflows we have built into the tool now for design and documenting design. So where to now? That's the big question, not what I want to know. I just help build the tools, try to figure out what to do. So where to? We need to figure out, what are our goals, who wants to use the tool, who are the stakeholders, what part of the workflow needs to be altered or affected, and again, how that facilitates what you need to do your job, but also what other people need at different levels to do their job. And we know one tool is going to solve all the problems, of the world, but if we can try and cut across multiple different levels, I think we could be more successful in the future. So for example, what could monitoring resources be used to do? We could use it to, plan monitoring and track monitoring. We could use it to be a metadata tool. We talked about exporting the information out of monitoring resources into a standard metadata format, and we've done some pilot studies with that kind of thing. Use it as a reporting tool. Could be used as an analysis tool, or really a data discovery tool. So it could be used multiple different ways. So how do we do that, and what does that look like? And what that looks like is we need to start defining these different ideas in more discrete ways. So for example, this is just one example of what we could do. What we're trying to do is coordinate, document, and streamline multiple partners' collection from the CONUS 10 by 10 kilometer master sample. Okay, so, and that's sort of our goal, and our scope is cell collection. That would be the part of their workflow that we would impact, and we would create a time saving. So I always want to think about creating a time saving. Stakeholders now are in the North American MAP program, Integrated Monitoring Monarch program, and the USGS. But maybe in this room or somewhere else, there are other people that are interested in the same idea. So, my hope is to bring more people together and have this discussion at that level, so we can start connecting different people into an existing tool, making small tweaks to satisfy multiple different people's needs. This is one example of what I think we could do. So with that, I think I have a little bit of time left. I wanted to open it up to questions or comments or ideas, and we're going to do a lot more brainstorming about tools and